Despite painting all 6 sides with anchor seal twice in order to help stop the checking, this cherry I brought back from Ohio was just too moist for the climate here in Colorado, and you can see big old check marks going all the way through that log. Changed my band from my 1/8 inch to my 1-inch resaw band, skip tooth. There's no sense in fighting Mother Nature at this point. That check is going all the way through, and you can see it coming out the back side here. I'm just going to take my bandsaw, cut this in half, and we'll take a look at the log afterwards. Almost made it through. This is a 13-inch throat on that, and as you can see, I'm a little bit proud here, so I'm going to have to take this off before I can finish splitting it. My bandsaw guide is about 2 inches across from the center of the cut. So I've marked my 2 inches. It's not that much. I'm just going to take my chisel and knock it down. That should be enough to get us through. Let's go take a look. As you can see, there's now enough clearance underneath of the bearing surfaces to get us through. I've got this open. I've set my compass for 5.5 inches, which gives me an 11-inch diameter circle, which is about the maximum I can get on my lathe. Let's draw ourselves an 11-inch circle. Well, we've got our circle, so let's go back onto the bandsaw. The band's too thick to make this curve, but we'll be able to cut off the majority of the excess waste. I highlighted the line with a Sharpie to make it easier for me to see with my old eyes. Now I use my 1-inch band just to cut off some of the big corners. All right, there we go. We now have an 11-inch diameter chunk of wood. It's probably, let's get the ruler and measure exactly, about 5.5 inches thick at that section there. After cutting out our circle and mounted it on the lathe, gave it a test spin, we can get about 780 RPM before the wobble gets too bad. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn this outside edge down, try Try and take some of that wobble off, and then we'll clean this end up here. We've taken the majority of the round out of it, and now we're going to go to a bowl gouge and carve this edge to see if we can't get this to clean up. I've turned down the whole surface as you saw. Now we have some defects that we need to take care of. We have a big split going through here. We have another couple like there. We've got this crack right there. And this one, which is a continuation onto that rot that was on the back side. Plus I have a knot hole here that's just decayed. I'm going to dig this knot hole out. We are going to take this whole piece and submerge it in epoxy, put it into my pressure pot, and force epoxy into this wood in order to stabilize it. Here's our bowl blank. Now off of each of these 8 screw holes compared to the center, I drew lines. I have 8 quarters measured out. I marked the ends of each one of these. Now sometimes some of my best ideas just kind of filter down through me as I'm sitting around looking at a piece of wood. This would be a beautiful bowl, no doubt about it. Solid cherry, but I'm going to add a little bit of something to it here. I'm going to get on my drill press and drill a hole on a 45-degree angle down through this bowl. The reason why I'm going to do that is as we start to shape and carve the bowl, this hole is going to be on an angle. I'm going to end up with 8 spots, and they're going to look oval. Something like that. I think it'll add a little pizzazz to the bowl. It'll make it a little more fun. And I think putting Maui blue against this cherry, which I've done before, always comes out looking spectacular. As I showed you, I marked the block and then decided to drill double holes down through it to give it a little bit extra color. Now comes the point where I need to put this into epoxy. I found an old joint compound bucket that was the right size. Took it to my bandsaw, cut it in half. Going to put caulk in the bottom, seal this down, drop that in there, and then I'll be able to pour the epoxy on top and put it into my pressure vessel. We're at the point where I've mixed my epoxy. I used liquid glass super clear 2.0 since this is going to be a deep pour. I've already put the piece of wood in. I put these 2 screws in here so that after it's all been dried, and I have something to grab a hold of to lift that up and out, because it fills it up almost right to the very edge. Okay, it's time to pour our epoxy in. There's not much room on the edge for the epoxy to get around, so I'm going to have to pour this rather slowly and let it seep in first before I go further. I made 1 liter worth of solution at a 2-to-1 ratio because that's the biggest my container was. So I'm gonna have to go and make about another 500 mils in order to fill this bucket. Here's our second edition, another 500 mils deep pour epoxy. Since the density of epoxy is greater than that than wood, wood will float. So whenever you're using epoxy, you either have to have some weight on top of it like this or clamps to keep it submerged. In this case, I'm just using some bars of lead to keep it under. I brought this up to almost 3 atmospheres of pressure. We're going to let it sit like this probably for 2, maybe 3 hours. And we're going to open the lid up again and take a check on it. My guess is because this is old cherry, that there's lots of cracks and soft spots that I don't know about. And some of the epoxy that I saw on the top surface will be pushed into the wood. And maybe enough will be pushed in that I will have to make another addition. It's been 3 hours at 3 atmospheres. I've taken the dogs off of it, shorten this up a little bit. Let's see what's on the inside. Just as I expected, it has gone down quite a bit. I can't even see the epoxy on this edge here. Quite a lot of it's been absorbed. You know, we'll make some more and we'll pour it on and bring it back up to level. We're pouring on another 600 mils of epoxy. You can see that it's just covering the surface. The container is slightly tipped this way, so I've got more over here than over there. I'm going to put it back under pressure for another couple hours. See how much more gets pushed into this wood. I'm hoping not too much because I'm coming close to running out of my Super Clear 2.0. Here's our project so far. It's all filled in with epoxy now. Now the hard part comes. I need to get this block of wood and epoxy out of this bucket, which is probably going to be, relatively speaking, kind of difficult. I don't even know how I'm going to get it out. But well, we got a chunk out. There's the epoxy. It kind of puffed out on me, so I lost quite a bit of epoxy down here. Next time I'll have to put a spacer underneath it so it doesn't leak down through. Now for the sides. You certainly don't want this screw in there. That'll ruin things for sure. All right, see if we can move it. Nope, that's not working either. All I managed to do was crack the epoxy. Got my little mini hacksaw blade. We'll try that first. There. There's our piece. I'm gonna get some vice grips and get this out first. Then we'll take it over and put it on the lathe and see how it spins. Well, that is one massive block of epoxy and wood. It's the largest thing I've ever turned down on my lathe. Let's get it spinning and see how fast we can go before we hit vibration. It's 450 RPM. Not bad for a big block like that. See how much more we can get out of it. Back it down. Anything over 700 causes way too much vibration. It's 695 to 700. It varies a little bit. That's where we'll have to start to turn this big block down. Well, let's see how it works. We'll try and carve that big block off the bottom first. Out some of the middle. Carved out a little bit of it the other night because I wanted to see what it looked like, but now I've got my drill bit set. We're going to drill down to our finished depth. We can now see our blue epoxy stripes coming in. That one's just under the surface. And there's another one in here. Just have to get a little deeper for it. But hopefully we'll have nice long blue stripes on the interior of the bowl when we're finished. Okay, you can see where our blue epoxy spots are coming through. Those two are just different angles. We'll have to see how they come out. But so far, looking fairly interesting. We'll see how it goes when we finish it up. Here's pretty much our final configuration of the bowl. I talked with the technical staff at Jet, letting them know that I was getting a considerable amount of vibration while this bowl was spinning. And they said that shouldn't happen. Most likely that the workstation was not solid enough or heavy enough to counteract the vibrations. So that's why you're missing a chunk of the video, because it was vibrating so hard that it was just bouncing all over the place. So now all we need to do is finish up by sanding, and our bowl should be ready to go. Okay, it's time to do a little bit of sanding. Outside's looking pretty good. That was just 220. I'll have to sand it some more. Got one spot right there. I'll have to work on that. I applied a coat of oil to it just to give the wood a little moisture, since it's a very old piece of cherry. But as you can see, it's come out really nice. I'm going to coat it another couple times with oil, and then I'll put the beeswax on it to seal it. Here's our bowl, all finished up. Looks really nice. I think the blue spots came out good, both on the interior and the exterior.